Well, colonies on Mars could be a century in the future, but many of you watching this programme might just see them. Until recently, most of us didn't make it much past the biblical 70 years and 10, but it is becoming more and more normal to live past 100. And in the near future, thanks to genetic tinkering, extraordinary lifespans might become common, at least for a wealthy elite. One scientist has even suggested that the first person to live for 1,000 years could already be alive. It may sound great, but a report on Tuesday will highlight the social problems that may arise and which we need to start thinking about. A little earlier, I spoke to Professor Sarah Harper from Oxford University's Institute of Population Ageing, and I began by asking her about the current ways in which life is being extended.
Well, one of them is the natural life extension that is just occurring because we have a whole generation coming through that had immunisations when they were children, they had good diets, they probably had reasonable amounts of exercise. And so their lives are just getting longer and longer because we're living better. We're not being killed off by accidents or by famine in the way that we used to be a couple of hundred years ago.
But there's more we can do, isn't there? I mean, by tampering with the biology in a way.
Yes, I mean, there are two ways. There's what we call incremental longevity, and that means that if we could cure the chronic diseases of later life, which are cancer, diabetes and cardiovascular disease, demographers suggest you could add 12 years onto life expectancy, which meant that most people would have a life expectancy of 100. And indeed, people are currently saying that babies born at the moment, their life expectancy could well be 103 or more. But then you have radical longevity. And that's when people are looking at really tampering with the fundamental cells of the body.
How does it work?
Well, there are different ways in which you can do this. One of the things that I think is something we really have to look at is the whole array of now stem cell therapy. Because stem cell therapy is not really about lengthening lives. It's about stopping us dying. And stopping us dying by replacing cells that are not operating in the way that they should, so either cells in organ or cells in different parts of the body. But inevitably, it's going to allow us to live longer.
How much longer? What do you think?
Well, ONS has recently come out with predictions that we, at the moment, have about 10,000 centenarians in this country. By the middle of the century, we could be heading towards 500,000 people aged over 100. And by the end of the century, we could have nearly 1 million people in this country who are approaching or at 100. And they're also talking about extending into the supercentenarian. That's people who live to 110 or even 120.
Aren't you being a bit pessimistic, though? I mean, not so long ago, one geneticist said that people could easily be living to 1,000.
Yeah. If you do the computer models, then yes, you can get people to live huge lengths of lives. But in the real world, the kind of interventions you would need, we just don't have the kind of institutional or medical framework to allow that to happen. It's highly unlikely that anybody today will actually live over 200, or 1,000 is, I think, very, very unlikely.
But there is that risk, isn't there, that with all these new technologies and so on, that people can pay,
Yep.
And then there's a divide there, a longevity divide.
Yeah. That, I think, is a really big issue for the 21st century. Are we going to extend maximum life expectancy? And that means that you have a few rich people in America or in China, and they are buying long lives of 110, 120, and we still have children in Africa with life expectancies of 35. Or are we going to be able to work so that most people who are born in the world can expect to live to 100, fit and healthy? And to a certain extent, really serious ethical decisions have got to be made about that.
Sarah Harper speaking to me earlier. And before we go, a bit of breaking news. Treasury sources have told the Press Association that the Chancellor, George Osborne, will announce a scheme which will see the government underwrite billions of pounds in loans to small businesses. Details of the credit easing plan will be laid out in his autumn statement on Tuesday. It's expected that more than £10 billion will be made available over the next 2 years. And you can contact me direct on Twitter @Cathy Newman, and you can read more on our website. We're back tomorrow at 7:25. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.